Tim Scott files his paperwork to run for the presidency, adding another person officially to the roster of people who are running for the presidency. We will talk about Tim Scott, why I actually was mildly interested in him at first, and why I think that this may be a little bit of a bad idea. But we'll go over some of that and why I liked him and why I think this is bad. So that's going to be our top story after finance today. In other news, Russia, again, in an attempt to try to make themselves seem like they are the ones who are sponsoring the GOP, bans Obama, Maddow, and Colbert, and a number of others over sanctions and, of course, to do things to further divide the civil war in the West. So we'll be going over that, what's happening there, and what's going on with that. There was a stall in the debt ceiling talks today, and the stocks really took a hammer off of that, so we'll be talking a bit about what's going on with there. That'll be a very, very close one. Plus, some very expensive programs that the Democrats want to try to push in, regardless of the fact that we are looking at a massive debt ceiling showdown. And a man with an AR-15 is seen standing outside of a school every day with, of course, a MAGA hat, which tells me, this person probably glows in the dark, so we'll go over some of that. And the reporting from WBAL TV 11. It's going to be all of this and more on what I think might be an abbreviated contemporary tonight. So grab a snack, get some friends, and get some more people in here. And I was the one flying the balloons. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. Ladies, drink free. We've got what appears to be maybe a short show here tonight. But, I always say that, and then we wind up going for the full 2 hours and sometimes longer. 2 hours and 20 minutes last night, too, by the way. Which was a fantastic show. I was really, really getting into the things I like and things that I hate, which, is a part of the reason I do things that I like and things that I hate. So, there's big reason for that, and we're happy for that. But we've got a lot of news to go over here today on Contemporary, and we're going to get to all of it here. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming, such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys. If you're on Twitter, go check out tweets by Brit, one of my favorite Twitter accounts. If you're more into video games, Mr. Behavior is the guy for you. You can go check out the No Gimmicks podcast if you are more into an audio platform experience. Silent Caster as well if you're into gaming and news, and if you want something a bit more lighthearted onto the news, go check out Clown World Chronicles with Papa Palpatine, and go check out all that great programming. Get your news from people who are just like you. Stop getting your news from people who wear suits that cost more than your houses. That's what we aim to give you, a better news experience. So, with all that being said, let's get down into our news and our finance of the day. We've got a double layoffs report today, so well, let's get into it. Let's talk about what we've got to talk about, and let's get started. And we're not going to be looking directly at me when I change the scene this time again. All right, starting with the Dow. The Dow is sitting at 426.63 at the end of the day, which is down on the day, 109.28 points down, or 1/3%. So it looks like, and a lot of the articles are talking about it, that the stall in the debt ceiling talks is what drove it down, and it was just not able to recover. So we'll be talking about what's happening with that, both in the finance and also in the debt ceiling talks. Looking at your Bitcoin, which is sitting at $26,872 US and 90 US cents on a whirlwind day of up and down trading on the coin. It wound up $52.50 on the day, or 0.2%, so a little bit of increase, but nothing to write home about there. Your gas prices in Madison remain at $3.50 after taking a couple days and jumping back up. So I do hope that you were able to go in and top off the tank before it got too expensive. And let's see what our finance has to say. Let's get the live chat up here too, by the way. We got to get that up here and going. See what's going on over on the Rumble side. Get some things going on. We got some things going on over on this side too. Silent Cancer can't wait for Biden's teleprompter to win a second term. How do you know it's a man in a MAGA hat? Did you ask them their pronouns, you bigot? Maybe it's a Z-zer or they're gender fluid. It'll be okay. It's not like J. Edgar 101 has the info on the Clintons. No, I do not. All right, let's read from IBD. We don't do this. We don't do IBD so often anymore because that's more of a before trading kind of thing. But we're going to talk about what they have here today from Investors Business Daily. Dow Futures, debt ceiling talks, Nvidia earnings key for market rally. Is Tesla a buy? Typically, from Ed Carson. Dow Futures will open Sunday evening, along with the S&P Futures and the NASDAQ Futures. Nvidia earnings loom large this coming week, with debt ceiling talks also key. The market rally strengthened this past week on debt ceiling deal optimism and easing bank fears, with gains led by AI fusion tech leaders such as Nvidia, AMD, ServiceNow, Alphabet, Snowflake, Palantir Technologies. The NASDAQ and the S&P hit 2023 highs, with the NASDAQ setting its best levels in more than a year, not anywhere close to record highs, but they're year highs at least. The White House and congressional leaders appear to be moving towards a debt ceiling deal, while concerns about regional banks waned. On Friday, GOP negotiators suspended the debt ceiling talks, saying President Biden's White House was being unreasonable. This could just be public give and take before the last-minute deal. At around the same time, a report came out that stating that Treasury Secretary Yellen told bank execs that more bank mergers may be needed. That hit the regional bank stocks on Friday, though they rose strongly for the week. Best economy in history right there. The major indices took the debt ceiling setback and Yellen's comments in stride on Friday, partly because Jerome Powell signaled he favors a rate pause next month. You'll be sorry. Still, those headlines are a reminder that good news for the market could quickly turn bad. The market rally remains somewhat split. With narrow leadership, still investors can be adding exposure carefully, though not a lot of stocks are offering buying opportunities at the moment. Tesla made a bullish move this past week amid its shareholder event, clearing some key levels. So, that is where we are at on the markets today, and we'll be talking more about that when we get into the stocks. Let's look at our layoffs report. Fox News joining the layoffs report. Layoffs at Fox News unrelated to $787 million Dominion settlement, sources say. Well, I'm sure that actually probably has a little bit of something to do with it. Maybe not the direct thing, but, all media is having problems with advertising. It's just a sign of the times. Alright, from Evan Rosen, reports Friday indicated Fox News is dissolving its investigative unit to cut costs following the company's $787.5 million settlement with Dominion. But a source tells the Daily News this is not an accurate picture. The latest moves regarding the unit have nothing to do with Dominion, a source with knowledge of the situation said, adding the unit was realigned, not dissolved. Rolling Stone was the first to take a victory lap about the axing of the investigative unit because Rolling Stone is not about music anymore. The rank-and-file journalists are getting let go, meanwhile upper management are sitting pretty while they are the execs responsible for the Dominion debacle, one Fox employee told the magazine. Layoffs are happening and continue to happen, confirmed another staffer, while a former employee said they have to save money because of the Dominion lawsuit. However, rumors of the settlement's impact may have been exaggerated. There were 3 employees in the 7-person unit impacted, while 4 employees were offered different positions within the company, a source told the news. So, it's a small amount of layoffs, but yeah, it's even reached out to Fox News. So, that's where we are at with that. And I threw this one in there for entertainment. This isn't about new layoffs, but what this is something that I was assured never happens. That's right, there's no such thing as unemployment fraud. Except maybe in Massachusetts, according to MarketWatch. Rising layoffs, not so fast. Fraud in Massachusetts inflates jobless claims. From Jeffrey Bartash. Widespread fraud in Massachusetts has exaggerated the recent surge in jobless claims. How do we know that this is coming? How did we know right off the bat this was going to come from a liberal blue state, by the way? Oh, this welfare fraud never happens. Mogwai says Hannity is Fox News, and he tells it like Trump tells him to. I think Hannity's going to get on board with somebody else this time through. I think so. Excuse me. And I'm thinking it is going to be DeSantis. I'm thinking that is going to be the neocon push to get everybody behind DeSantis. Let's see. New jobless claims en masse jumped to a 2.5-year high of 34,943 2 weeks ago, up from less than 7,000 a week in late January. In the same week of May in 2022, by contrast, new unemployment filings in the state totaled just around 4,000. A sharp upturn in new claims en masse starting around late February, as it turns out, largely fueled the increase in total U.S. jobless claims. No, it didn't. They jumped to a seasonally adjusted 264,000 in the first week of May from 221,000 a few months earlier. Does this mean layoffs in the U.S. haven't risen at all this year? No. More businesses have laid off workers, especially in high tech. Jobless claims have crept higher after touching more than half-century low of 182,000 last fall. Yet the increase in jobless claims now appears rather small and not indicative at all of a deteriorating labor market when the fraud en masse is taken into account. If you look at unadjusted claims, they've barely budged all year, noted Richard Moody, chief economist at Regions Financial. The Mass Department of Unemployment Assistance acknowledged it's combating an increase in fraud. DUA continues its efforts to prevent, detect, and capture these fraudulent claim attempts, said spokesman Matthew Kitsos. But unemployment fraud never happens. We really need to help these people. Nobody takes advantage of a government program, right, guys? There are a couple of other problems with this, especially when it comes down to the unemployment rate, because what they keep talking about with this is first-time claims. When more jobs lay off, or people get fired, or people get cut due to expenses, or a number of other things that happen. And these numbers are still doing 250,000 a week across the country. Now, some of these people, because of the mass amount of low-skill job openings, can come back and get off unemployment pretty quickly. They'll maybe spend a week or two on unemployment while they go back and figure out how to get into a restaurant job or something like that, or a factory job. So that's what's holding some of the continuing claims down, because if you're losing 250,000 jobs a week, that number is going to hit somewhere noticeable fairly quickly. And none of this, a part of the problem with this is that none of the statisticians take continuing claims into this, nor do they take workforce participation into account with any of this, which is at record lows. So, but mostly, again, I brought this on to talk about the fact that, nobody takes advantage of government programs, you evil bigot. Well, one of the bluest states in the country is telling you otherwise. All right. Let's talk Tim Scott. I know we have a South Carolinian here in the audience with us today, so there'll be some interest there. From USA Today, to start with, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott files to run for the presidency in 2024. David Jackson and Philip M. Bailey reporting. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott officially entered the presidential race Friday when he filed paperwork with the FEC. Scott, who formed an exploratory committee last month, is scheduled to make his announcement speech on Monday in his hometown of North Charleston, which we will be watching on this channel, by the way. American families are starving for hope, Scott tweeted on Thursday. We need to have faith, faith in God, faith in each other, and faith in America. Scott, the lone black Republican in the Senate, is vying to be the first African American to win the GOP nomination. He would be the second elected to the White House after Barack Obama in 2008. The former Congressman Scott enters the race well behind in the polls to former President Trump and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. However, what Senator Tim Scott does and doesn't say about the that's a link, never mind. But the devoutly evangelical Scott, who has put his faith and hardship upbringing at the center of his campaign, will enter the race flush with money. He has squirreled away roughly $22 million cash on hand, which his aides argue makes him one of the few GOP contenders who can seriously challenge Trump. The budding campaign has carved out about $6 million in TV and radio ads and has placed his first TV ad spending in early presidential primary states according to Medium Buying. Scott proved to be a formidable fundraiser during the 2022 campaign when he hauled in $43.1 million for his re-election according to Federal Election Commission records. A Scott Alliance Super PAC, Opportunity Matters Fund Action, has almost matched that figure, raising $37.3 million according to Open Secrets. Scott will need every penny to build up his name recognition as he hovers around 2% in the primary surveys. He's not the only South Carolinian in the race. Former Governor Lady Bush, who appointed Scott to a vacant U.S. Senate seat in late 2012, is also running. Democrats mocked Scott's entry into the Republican race, calling him a Trump-like politician who wants to ban abortion, which Trump doesn't, reduce Social Security and Medicare, which Trump doesn't, and ease regulations on big business. I mean, if that's actually his platform, where is he aligned with Trump? Just on the easing of regulations? Oh, good God, why would we ease regulations on people who are trying to employ more people when we have a record low workforce participation? Yeah, Lindsey Graham's a bottom. Everybody's over Lindsey Graham. Jamie Harrison, who chairs the DNC, said Tim Scott wants to govern from the far conservative right, which is also a lie, by the way. Is a proud member of the Tea Party, which means that he's not from the far right, by the way. The being of the Tea Party is like the antithesis of being on the far right, and his extreme record proves it. So, when we first started talking Tim Scott, and I didn't actually think that he was going to, I was mildly interested in what Tim Scott had to say. I have been since the beginning. Because he is a different politician, and he kind of bridges the gap a little bit between MAGA and Evangelocanism. Two things that I am very interested in for the Republican Party. Now, to bring this into focus, into where Tim Scott would land, if his timing had been a little bit different, would be that I think he sits, and this is from listening to speeches, and this is from seeing some of the events that he's done, I think that Tim Scott stands a little bit closer to where I stand on the idea that we'd like to see a more Christian nation, but we don't want to necessarily use the legal system to cram it down your throats, like some of my friends do. I like Tim Scott. I like his agenda. I like where he stands. Fiscally, I think that he would do fantastically. And of course, in campaigning, he doesn't have to bow down to donors in quite the same way that Ron DeSantis would have to. He doesn't have to do the donor dance in quite the same way that Asa Hutchinson or Nikki Haley would, both of which are hoping to get in with donor lists of places such as Halliburton or Raytheon. Big oil, big war. It's part of the reason that I say Nikki Haley is Lady Bush. Well, that and the fact that she thinks that the entire Middle East needs to be turned into the biggest church in the world after you've evicted all the residents of it. My problem with Tim Scott has actually absolutely nothing to do with his policy, oddly enough. It's the way that he got into the race. We're in a situation where we've got to have people who are confident enough in what they do that they can pull the trigger. The exploratory committee is a thing of the past, especially on the GOP side. The Democrats can come back out there because they're mainly appointed by a committee anyway. There really isn't. I mean, you can do primary stuff with Democrats, but it's just not there. Basically, what you do with a Democrat primary at this point is You pick and choose who gets in and out of the race and who gets delegates and who turns their delegates over to try to get certain demographics out in the states that you're looking to win. Like when we were looking to get X amount of people out in South Carolina, right away we get Biden in there because I don't know that he had started running by Iowa. But you get him, but you get a few of the other more race-centric, the people whose policies more center around race, to stay into the race until South Carolina. And then at the end, everybody drops out except for Bernie Sanders to give their delegates over to Biden and give Biden a clear winning lead over Bernie Sanders. But you leave Bernie Sanders in so that when you get to a state where you happen to have a Scott Walker appointed justice running for re-election against a Madison progressive, all of your Madison progressives come back out for the primary to vote for Bernie, and just happen to go check the Supreme Court, Wisconsin Supreme Court nominee on their way down the ticket. That's what the Democrat primary system has become. So for them, an exploratory committee is just for them to make a case to the DNC and say, hey, I think that I can do it. I think I can beat the evil, insert the name of whoever the Republicans are going to put up. Please pick me. Or at least tell me what the plan is so I can go out and sell a few books and garner favor within the DNC. That's what the Republican nomination process is. The Democrat nomination process is. The Republican process, it used to be like that. Basically, they picked who you wanted, and then you were expected to everybody fall in line and vote for that person. With a lot of people going on the walk-away movement after Barack Obama, especially a lot of the union workers who were either losing their jobs or being told that their jobs were never going to come back to this country, and looking for the alternative and running over to the Republican side because a guy who used to be a Democrat was telling them all the things that they wanted to hear. That what happened in the Republican primary in 2016 kind of upended everything. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Scott and why I think his exploratory committee is a terrible idea. And it does. It shows hesitancy. As much as I dislike Ron DeSantis, I will give him a nickel's worth of free advice and say, if you want to be the president, don't do an exploratory committee like Tim Scott did. It will show once and for all that you have no balls. Which is my criticism of Tim Scott. He had to go through the focus group. He had to let them tell him that he was ready to go run for the presidency instead of just coming in and saying, especially with a $22 million war chest and a super PAC that's got him well overmatched at that point. There's no reason for an exploratory committee for Tim Scott. Yeah, I'm sure that Ronna Romney will propel whoever it is to victory. Yep. Good old Ronna Romney. So, Tim Scott is running for the presidency, already on false pretenses from his opponents. Read a little bit from Axios here. Scott, the most prominent black figure in the Republican Party and one of the Senate's most formidable fundraisers, enters a crowded GOP field. It's not a crowded field. Trump, Haley, Hutchinson, Ramaswamy, and Scott. Oh, and Elder, I guess. There's 6 people officially running. That's another thing that's changed at this point. That's not a crowded field anymore. That's a bunch of also-rans who want to sell a book. A crowded field is what we saw with the circus in the Democrat primary, with well-spoken people with, well, the same ideas over and over, and yet we still managed to walk away with a geriatric man who doesn't remember his own name half the time. Out of 25 people, that's who we got. I did that. Since launching his exploratory committee, Scott has been making repeated trips to Iowa, New Hampshire, and his home state of South Carolina as part of his listening tour, Faith in America. Asa Hutchinson and Vivek Ramaswamy are also declared candidates in the GOP primary. Governor Executive Order is expected to announce his presidential bid soon. Scott will argue he's the most consistently conservative candidate, and that his personal story growing up a poor single-parent household will resonate as he advocates for various policy issues. According to the senior campaign official, I don't know if that's going to play... Well, nothing that Tim Scott is going to do is going to play with the far, far right because of the color of his skin. The Groypers will not vote for Tim Scott. And as distasteful as those people are, the GOP needs that vote. I wish that wasn't the case. Do you have a pulse? Well, you too can win the Democratic nomination. Scott aligns with much of the Trump policy agenda, including building a wall on the southern border, cutting taxes and spending, and holding China to account. But he's positioning himself as a more hopeful alternative to Trump's grievance-driven campaign or DeSantis' war on woke. Scott will frame the U.S. as a land of opportunity, not oppression, and promise to call out what he and his advisors see as a culture of victimhood, including when it exists on the right. Scott enters the race with $22 million in hand. A senior campaign official said much of that was left over from the 2022 cycle when he raised $42 million. So I guess we will sit back and see what it is that Tim Scott does. Again, mildly interested in what it is that he has to say. I think that if he had the courage to go back and jump in right away, I think that he would have been the best shot. I am a big fan of Tim Scott. All right. And we've got some more election news not having to do with Tim Scott. The AP. This is... Now, I call out the editorialization of the Associated Press a lot, because it's really bad. This one takes the cake. False claims of a stolen election thrive unchecked on Twitter, even as Musk promises otherwise, from Ali Swenson. If you don't have a pulse, you're still quite useful to the Democratic Party, so don't worry. In an interview this week, Twitter owner Elon Musk said users making false claims of stolen elections will be corrected on the platform. Prompted by a CNN reporter for extra assurance of what happened, Musk responded, "Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, that was a cop-out answer. That was I don't care what it is that you have to say, this is my platform and I'm going to run it the way that I want." Yet many such claims have thrived on Twitter in the week since the former president spent much of a CNN town hall digging in on his lie that Caitlin Collins kept trying to shove into the spotlight. That the 2020 election was the freest and fairest election in history and nothing bad happened. Twitter posts that amplify those false claims have thousands of shares with no visible enforcement or view of posts on the platform shows. The contrast between Musk's promise and the extent that the claims are spreading on Twitter underscores a major challenge for social media companies trying to call out election conspiracy theories and falsehoods that Trump and his supporters continue to promote. That will only grow as the nation prepares for the presidential election next year, in which Trump is again vying to be the Republican nominee. It is unclear whether Musk and his newly hired chief executive, Linda Yaccarino, are planning any changes to Twitter to crack down on the misinformation, which election experts and tech accountability advocates say heightens the risk to election officials and erodes the trust in our hegemony. Talk is cheap, said David Becker, a former U.S. Justice Department lawyer who now leads the nonprofit Center for Election Innovation and Research. Yes, how do we make our campaigners, the people that we want to win. It's good that he acknowledges that's important for Twitter to act responsibly, but when we have to see this action usually actually taken, because it's happening right now. Yeah, okay. But they're not putting community notes on the claims of election fraud. Why aren't they doing that? Well, because a lot of people see through the crap. Now, mind you, a reminder that the 2020 election was the freest and fairest election in history. There was absolutely zero fraud anywhere. Except the carefully chosen stories of Trump supporters that sites like the Associated Press allow to get leaked out to the public. Those evil MAGAs. Alright, let's talk about the propaganda report. From the Hill. Russia bans Obama, Maddow, Colbert over sanctions. From Jared Gans. Russia has banned hundreds of U.S. citizens, including former President Obama, political commentator Rachel Maddow, and late-night host Stephen Colbert from entering its territory in response to the U.S. sanctions over the Ukraine war. And also, in a way, to further divide the U.S. people, because a weaker U.S. that's divided is a good thing for Putin. The Russian Foreign Affairs Ministry said in a post on Friday on its website it is blocking entry for 500 Americans in response to the sanctions it said are designed to inflict the most damage possible on officials and civilians in Russia. The list of banned individuals includes former officials, lawmakers from both parties who were elected to Congress during last year's midterm elections and may have been missed in previous rounds, experts and analysts for centers for the ministry, and spread Russophobic attitudes, and companies that have supplied weapons to Ukraine to defend itself against Russia's invasion. The ministry said the list also includes individuals who have been involved in the persecution of dissidents, who participated in the January 6th Selfie Fest. It is high time for Washington to learn that not a single hostile attack against Russia will be left without strong reaction. The principle of inevitability of punishment will be consistently applied. Whether we are talking about tougher sanctions, pressure, or discriminatory steps to hinder professional activities of fellow citizens. The US and other Western allies of Ukraine have placed sanctions on Russia numerous times since Russian forces began their full-scale invasion of Ukraine last year, and also, by the way, have been doing this since the 60s. This is nothing but propaganda. Again, this is nothing but Russia finding a way to go back and feed the narrative into websites like The Hill of saying, Putin, he's pulling the strings on Trump again and all of his supporters. Look, he's making villages that all of Trump's supporters can come in once they inevitably lose the election. And oh look, he's banning all Democrats from his country, which means that he must be in the pocket of the MAGA GOP. And by the way, it's from both parties, so I'm willing to bet that if we look at the list of 500 people, the Republicans that are on there are Bushite neoconservative Republicans, like Mitt Romney. Bet me. I don't have the list in front of me, and I didn't put it on the stack. But this is nothing but propaganda. Late night host Jimmy Kimmel and Seth Meyers and former NBC and MSDNC anchor Brian Williams are also banned. And again, with the propaganda that's coming on here, this is a list of people who would never go to Russia in the first place. They couldn't be seen dead in Russia because the supporters of the party, capital T, capital P, would crucify them for doing so. Absolutely crucify them if they're even considered going to St. Petersburg. Let's talk about the debt ceiling. From CNBC, debt ceiling talks resume after Republicans trigger brief pause. From Christina Wilkie. High-stakes talks are over raising the debt limit resumed in the Capitol on Friday, hours after they were paused at midday when Republican negotiators walked out of the room and blamed the White House for holding up discussions. "We'll be back in the room tonight," said Kevin McCarthy on Fox Business moments before negotiators were spotted returning to the room where talks have taken place. But it's very frustrating when if they want you to come to the table and think that we're going to spend more money next year than we did this year. That's not right, and that's not going to happen, said McCarthy. One of the toughest sticking points in the talks has been the question of spending caps, a key GOP demand, but a red line for a significant block of Democrats. As the White House presses for a debt limit hike that would push the next deadline past the 2024 presidential election, no. Republicans are insisting on a spending cap for the next year that goes beyond a freeze on the current top line number and actually rolls government spending back to 2022 levels. Let's spend less, let's pull back the pinko pox money that we haven't spent, work requirements, let's do some permitting reform. I think we could probably find a good agreement and be able to move forward, said McCarthy, laying out the GOP's demands, in addition to the spending caps. Holding their respective caucuses together has become more difficult this week for party leaders, not less, as opposition to any compromise has grown among blocs of conservatives and Republicans and progressive Democrats. Any deal to raise or suspend the debt limit will need to pass both the GOP-led House and Democrat-controlled Senate, and key lawmakers in both parties have acknowledged that the eventual compromise bill could be unacceptable to hardliners on either side. There are real differences between the parties on budget issues, and talks will be difficult, the White House spokesperson told NBC News. After the talks broke up, the president's team is working hard towards a reasonable bipartisan solution that can pass the House and Senate. But they're keeping that 14th Amendment, by the way, hanging out in the back of their minds because that's what they really want to do. They want to find something, anything. And by the way, the 14th Amendment is not a viable solution for this, where they can suspend the debt ceiling unilaterally because the public debt cannot be denied. That's not what the 14th Amendment says. Well, it's what it says, but the way they're interpreting it is not what it means. But see, when they go to pull the 14th Amendment and the Supreme Court knocks it down because that's not what it means, then the media can come back out and say it's the evil Trump-appointed Supreme Court that stopped it, not the White House, who refused to budge on the deal. I see the path that we can come to an agreement, the California Republican told reporters on Thursday. President Brandon is in Japan this weekend, embarrassing our country for a G7 leaders summit, but he cut his trip short in order to return home on Sunday and continue negotiations. I can't wait to get back here on Monday and see a picture of somebody else leading Biden around. The House and Senate both kept their original plans to leave for the weekend on Thursday. The Senate's not scheduled to be back in session until the last few days of May. So we're going to take this right down to the line. Investors have been watching Washington closely this week for any signs of progress in the months-long debt ceiling standoff that did start until 10 days ago. Earlier this month, the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen pegged June 1st as the earliest date on which the U.S. could run out of money, pay debts the government has already incurred. But they did come back in, and they're still talking somehow. I don't know how this is going to go either. Some of the key sticking points, as reported by ABC. Key sticking points, possible areas of compromise in the debt ceiling showdown, from Alexandra Hutzler. Man, do you know how perfect it would have been if this track that we have in the background would have come up like 5 minutes ago when we were talking about Russia banning the journalists? And then we have the Tetris theme in the background. Dude, I can't go into the store portion of the Cracker Barrel. It is way too disorganized for me. Well, I'd probably be better now. Because the last time I was actually in a Cracker Barrel was right after the heroin addict, well, she wasn't evicted, but right after I finally got rid of her, and I kind of collapsed into a little bit of obsessive compulsion as a defense mechanism. And the disorganization of the Cracker Barrel store just... My brain was on fire the entire time I was trying to sit down there and eat. I was with my parents, too, on top of it. Dude, I couldn't eat. I was so disturbed by the store portion. I just wanted to go out in the store and organize it. I don't know what a Buc-ee's is. Alright, anyway, let's keep going. After a sign of at least incremental progress, high-stakes negotiations on avoiding a disastrous debt default abruptly stalled on Friday, with a standoff over the proposed spending cuts a key sticking point. House Republicans said they were pressing pause on the talks, citing the White House's unreasonable position, a major snag that comes amid a shrinking timeline for lawmakers to reach a deal or risk default. The White House has said the two sides face real differences when it comes to spending, but still believed a bipartisan agreement was possible. The apparent breakdown comes as opposing factions were raising the pressure on both the left and the right, raising questions about whether, even if a deal were reached, it would have enough support to pass Congress, which is going to be the big question. The House Freedom Caucus, a group of hardline conservatives, on Thursday urged Republicans to stop any further discussions and instead forge ahead with their partisan Limit Save Grow Act, which will never pass the Senate in any form. I have problems believing it can pass the Senate as the compromise that they're working on, but as it was written the first time, no, that's impossible. That doesn't math. On the other side of the aisle, progressive Democrats appear concerned that the negotiations could result in Biden giving up too much to Republicans. A group of Senate Democrats, led by Bernie Sanders, called on Biden to use the 14th Amendment, which says the validity of the public debt shall not be questioned, to unilaterally raise the debt ceiling, which again is not what that says. That means that the states can't come back up and say, we're not going to pay our taxes because we don't believe in your debt. That's what the 14th Amendment says. This thing that they keep trying to do with the 14th Amendment has absolutely nothing to do with raising the debt ceiling. It has everything to do with the states being required to pay their taxes. And this was prior to, by the way, the Income Tax Amendment. Back at a time when the states were the ones who paid the taxes of the federal government. The states assessed a tax on you, or did whatever else that needed to do to raise capital for their states and run their governments, and then they owed X amount of tax to the federal government. And they were not allowed to call into question the validity of the debt and say, we refuse to pay our taxes because we don't like what you're doing in Washington. That's the 14th Amendment. Buc-ee's is the result of a gas station and Cracker Barrel one-night stand. Silentcaster likes Wawa food. Have you guys ever been to a Quick Trip? KWIK. From what I understand, and I've seen a Wawa, but I've never been inside one. A Quick Trip is basically the Wisconsin version of a Wawa. Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. And if you guys have not been in one, you are missing out. I've gone a week of every meal that I've had being from a Quick Trip. I gained a few pounds that week. With the nation barreling towards a default possibly as early as June 1st, Here's a look at what's been on the table in negotiations. Spending caps, which we've talked about. Work requirements, energy permitting reform, speeding up energy permit approvals to ease development so we can drill, baby, drill. But both parties are eyeing different reforms. Democrats have been seeking to speed up renewable energy projects, while Republicans are looking to ramp up gas and oil line productions. And my question here is, why not both? Speed up the permitting process on both at the same time. Let them compete with each other. Because the more energy they pump out, the cheaper it is for the rest of us. Unspent COVID relief money, we talked about that too. So, well, we've got some sticking points there. But tick-tock, tick-tock. There are 12 days left in this month. Just a reminder, that's counting today too, which is almost over. There are 11 days left in this month, and our default could hit as soon as June 1st. Tick-tock, tick-tock. A little bit more congressional and White House news. From CNN, Senate passes resolution to overturn Biden admin rule that does not penalize immigrants for receiving government benefits. So this is one of the spending packages that they have out there. The things that the Biden admin wants the debt ceiling raised for. This is from Nikki Robertson and Ted Barrett. The Senate passed a resolution on Wednesday to stop a Biden admin immigration rule that eliminates potential hurdles for immigrants using some public benefits and trying to obtain legal status known as public charge. It passed 50-47 with 2 Democratic senators crossing party lines, Manchin and Tester, both of whom were up for re-election. The resolution is an effort to return the Trump admin policy, which made it more difficult for immigrants to obtain legal status if they use public benefits. It is a joint resolution, meaning it would need to pass the House as well before it would reach President Biden's desk, where it will get vetoed, by the way. And the House has not yet voted on it. It is likely the Biden admin would issue a veto if a resolution also passes the House, which it probably will. So we will have 4 vetoes. I think this is a good thing. If you want the benefits, apply for citizenship. Go in and do it the right way. I don't believe in government benefits, but there's a give and take here. If you want them, be a citizen. Show us that you want to stick around, go back and eventually pay taxes, and give back what you took out of. But that's headed for a veto. More things that our government wants to spend, our Democrats in our government want to spend money on. Thus far, raising the debt ceiling. I don't know what the hell that sentence was that just came out of my mouth, but that was not English, whatever it was. Well, we'll read one here from our friends over at NPR. Cori Bush introduces bill on reparations for Black Americans. This is from Alana Wise. And remember, hit that donate button. NPR needs our money, comrade, because they're only 10% funded by the government. With ad revenue down, that means they need our money to make sure they can prop up and make rich people who will tell you that only the progressive way is right and anything to the right of Mao is evil and must be eliminated from the world. So hit that donate button. NPR is never printing reality. National Progressive Radio. Let's see what it is they have to say. Cori Bush has introduced new legislation calling for $14 trillion in reparations for Black Americans in an effort to see the federal government atone for the practice of chattel slavery and hundreds of years of racist policies that followed. Where's the money come from? That's my first question right off the bat. Where does the money come from, Cori? We're sitting here talking about how the debt is too high, and even Democrats coming in and saying the debt is too high. And here Cori Bush wants to make it go up half again. The U.S. has a moral and legal obligation to provide reparations for the enslavement of Africans and its lasting harm in the lives of millions of black people, Bush said in a Wednesday news conference attended by Barbara Lee and Jamal Bowman, as well as other stakeholders. Translation to all of this: vote for Democrats for a few more generations. We're going to keep giving you free stuff. America must provide reparations if we desire a prosperous future for all. Her resolution is the latest in a long line of congressional efforts by Democrats to compensate black Americans for centuries of racial inequity. Similar language about reparations has been introduced in every legislative session since 1989, and has failed in every single legislative session since 1989. We know we continue to live under slavery's vestiges. We know how slavery has perpetuated Jim Crow, which is over. We know how slavery's impacts live on today, because we're keeping them as slaves. The Democrats did say the last part out loud, but again, the most redlined cities that you will ever see are Democrat-run. I know. I lived in a redlined city for 5 years. It was called Kenosha, Wisconsin. And I lived on the wrong side of the red line on the times that I lived on my own. When I didn't live on my own, I actually lived on the positive side of the red line, but essentially, if you are black in Kenosha and you are looking at property or apartments anywhere west of 30th Avenue, you get looked at funny. They start to look at you funny if you get west of 22nd Avenue. But there's still some mingling there. If you're west of 30th Avenue, 30th Avenue is the red line in Kenosha. It is very much the red line. I know, I lived there for 10 years. It's unjust and it wouldn't happen in a just and fair, equitable society, she said. Those are not the natural consequences of human society. Translation: vote for us and we'll give you more free stuff. NPR, making study hall sound exciting since 1970. They are directly caused by our federal government's role in the enslavement and exploitation of Africans and black people throughout our history. In spite of the fact that our federal government has never had a law that allowed the government to enslave people directly. There's a lot of indirect enslavement that goes on, but that has to do with free stuff and wages. While the conversation around reparations has picked up traction in recent years, with about a dozen cities in the state of California considering reparations programs, they're vote buying. The concept remains broadly unpopular with Americans. Yeah, because nobody that's alive right now was ever a slave. And nobody that's alive right now has ever enslaved a person except for a few people in the Biden admin. You come in, you come out, you vote when we tell you to, how we tell you to, and where we tell you to, and once you're done, go back on the other side of the red line and we'll give you free stuff to keep you out of our hair. That's modern slavery. That's the reason it's broadly unpopular with Americans. Cori Bush continues and says the $14 trillion reparations bill will eliminate the racial wealth gap. From Beatrice Peterson. For the first time, the extensive history of the enslavement of Africans, post-Jim Crow discrimination, and other racially charged subjects has been entered into the congressional record. And repairing the lasting damage these institutions caused will have a hefty price tag, according to one Democratic lawmaker. In 23-page legislation introduced Thursday, Cory Bush called on Congress to adopt several measures aimed at righting historic wrongs, including urging the federal government to issue federal reparations to Black Americans and other reparatory justice information. The minimum of $14 trillion would be needed to eliminate the racial wealth gap that currently exists between Black and white Americans, the resolution argues. Where do you get the money from, Cory Bush? The U.S. has a moral and legal obligation to provide reparations for the enslavement of Africans and its lasting harm on the lives of millions of Black people in the U.S., H.R. 414 declares. Joining her at the press conference on Wednesday was Eric Miller, one of the attorneys for the 21 Tulsa Race Massacre. The Greenwood district of Tulsa, known as the Black Wall Street, was burned to ashes by white mobs on May 31st, 1921. Wow. Why can I not talk today? The last survivors of the massacre filed a lawsuit suing the city of Tulsa and local government entities, and will find out within days whether or not their lawsuit will be able to proceed. It won't. There's a huge amount of history that hasn't been uncovered, Miller told ABC News. We want to get the opportunity to paint the picture just as Bush is painting a picture of exactly what happened, he added, noting that he wanted to call out the names of the hundreds of pictures of people engaged in the massacre. $14 trillion. Not to be outdone, Biden also wants to go back out and use his debt ceiling to go buy more votes from college millennials, or college-educated millennials, I should say. From Insider, Biden's education department just released its strongest ever plan to ensure student loan borrowers don't graduate with unaffordable debt. From Eilert Chevy, President Biden's education department has released long-awaited proposals to establish safeguards for student loan borrowers. On Wednesday, the department announced its proposal for the new, strongest ever gainful employment rule and other plans to ensure financial transparency for students before they enroll in a program, according to a press release. The initial gainful employment rule was established by Barack Obama in 2014. It cut off federal student aid for schools that offered programs that left students with too much debt compared to their likely post-grad earnings. Like a certain mechanic school that I went to. However, Trump repealed the rule in 2019, and Biden pushed back its reinstatement to July 2024. So it shows up right before people go to the polls. Now, borrowers finally have a glimpse into the new rule. President Biden has taken unprecedented steps to fix our broken student loan system and help millions of Americans struggling with student debt, creating new opportunities for borrowers, their families, and their communities. At the same time, we need to hold colleges accountable for unaffordable costs and better protect students from programs that fail to deliver real value and upward mobility, Miguel Cardona said in a statement. The rules proposed today are about helping ensure that when students invest in a post-secondary education, they get a solid return on investment and a greater shot at the American dream. Undersecretary of Education James Kval told reporters on a Wednesday press call, the proposed rule would use two independent metrics to determine whether for-profit degrees and certificate programs across all institutions are delivering value to students. Specifically, those programs would be required to show that graduates could afford their student loan payments by ensuring the share of their annual earnings needed to make those payments, known as their debt-to-earnings ratio, was equal to or less than 20% of their discretionary earnings. And at least half the program's graduates had higher earnings than a typical high school graduate in the labor force who never pursued higher education. Aaron Ament, the president of the borrower advocacy group Student Defense, said in a statement that the announcement was a strong proposal. Ever since the Trump admin illegally repealed the 2014 gainful employment rule, students have been left unprotected from predatory higher ed profiteers, Ament said. Well, yeah, but they should be in, again, as a person who didn't, who was assured that he went to the best of the best, and promised that I would get $100,000 right out of school per year. You should be taking some time, especially as prominent as the internet is everywhere and reviews and everything else. You should be able to go and do your own research on things. KTZed did the math for us, so that's $14 trillion for reparations, scrapping student loans, unlimited benefits for migrants that should bankrupt the country nicely. Well done, Brandon. Thank you, KTZed. And Dual Helix showing up over on the Rumble side as well. Thank you, Dual Helix. Oh, speaking of thank you, Dual Helix, I almost forgot. I said at the end of the show because I didn't know if Mogwai was here when I said it because he hadn't been chatting at the time. But Mogwai gave a very, very generous cheer of 113 bits yesterday. I don't know what the exchange rate is for bits over on Twitch, but it is very, very appreciated nonetheless. Remember, if you guys are over on Twitch, that free subscription you get with Amazon Prime membership, that puts $250 in my pocket. And other than the $100 that you spent on a Prime membership, that's here. Mogwai's got my Cork sticker too. I gotta go through and finish my stickers because I've got 2 more tiers, even though I've never been subscribed to on Twitch for the 2nd or 3rd tier. I would like to give an incentive for people to actually do that. Right now there's no incentive to do it. Just tier 1. Having a GitHub with a 4-year history is probably worth more than a 4-year degree from college if you're in tech. I don't know if I know what GitHub is. I can say that having a Pornhub with a 4-year history is probably worth more than a 4-year degree from college if you're in tech, or happen to be a reasonably attractive female. Let's keep going before I violate any more of YouTube's rules. From the Blaze. Moving on, talking about Senator Feinstein. Senator Feinstein's office admits the 89-year-old Democrat had an advertisement pop up in front of her. Let's try this again. Senator Feinstein's office admits the 89-year-old Democrat had serious brain complications, prompting more calls for her resignation. From Joe McKinnon. Oh, nice. I've always wanted to learn to do that thing that you can't actually say on YouTube. Just sit down. I knew a little bit of BASIC when I was in high school, but I didn't really have the need for it after that. From Joe McKinnon. Senator Dianne Feinstein has signaled in recent days that she doesn't know where she's going and doesn't know where she's been. There's a country song reference in that. I don't know what it is. It's not the Cotton Eye Joe, because that's she doesn't know where she comes from and where she went. If we conjugate that properly anyway. Unable to ignore or conceal the 89-year-old's mental deterioration any longer, her handlers finally admitted the California Democrat's alleged case of shingles had a more profound impact on her body and mind than previously indicated. The senior Democrat was first allegedly diagnosed with shingles on February 26th, then hospitalized until March 6th. She has been in recovery ever since. A statement attributed to Feinstein last week, considering her return to Washington, that she does not appear to remember, indicated she was still experiencing temporary side effects from the virus, including vision and balance impairments. That was evidently not the whole story. Feinstein's office revealed Thursday that she's suffering from Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, a complication from the virus, reported the Associated Press. According to the Mayo Clinic, Ramsay-Hunt syndrome can result in hearing loss, eye problems, vertigo, and facial paralysis. So can a stroke. Just saying. While the syndrome alone might prove to be a stumbling block for anyone in such a consequential position, a spokesman for the Feinstein indicated the California Democrats' problems have affected far more than just her face and balance. Adam Russell revealed Feinstein suffered encephalitis well into March. Encephalitis is an inflammation of the brain. Sufferers reportedly experience flu-like symptoms, usually followed by more severe symptoms such as confusion, hallucinations, seizures, problems with speech, and loss of consciousness. Again, we're moving right into the stroke territory. Mogwai says, doesn't know where she's going or where she's been. She could be the next president. And Gordon Ramsay syndrome. She's complaining about the lack of lamb sauce. While Russell claimed Feinstein's brain inflammation resolved itself shortly after she was released from the hospital, the Mayo Clinic notes that complications, such as those now admitted by Feinstein's team on her behalf, can last for months or be permanent. So we have another Fetterman in the Senate, is what you're telling me. Terrific. The Hill, following up on this, Kana re-ups calls for Feinstein to resign after a return to the Senate. It's painful to watch. Ro Khanna, of course, not wearing his ceremonial Bajoran earring for this. Ro Khanna, the first member of the Congress to call for Dianne Feinstein to resign, doubled down on his request this week following new details about her health, saying, "It's sad for anyone to see." In an interview with MSDNC's Alex Wagner, the progressive congressman applauded the California senator's professional accomplishments, but emphasized that he believes her ongoing health concerns are disqualifying at this point. They are. So are Biden's. And that, by the way, is one of the hard parts of this conversation. These people are insistent and willing to have this conversation about Dianne Feinstein, while ignoring the fact that Joe Biden turns around and shakes hands with nobody. He talks like this when he's got to make a long speech and then turns his back on the crowd, and then sometimes goes off script and has to be wrangled by the Easter Bunny. This is a hard position for the Progressive Caucus to do so, and I think it's a real admission, the fact that they are not the one, like Biden is not the one controlling this. But he has to be there because he was elected by the American people. Honk honk. So his signature has to be there whether he's cognizant of what he's signing or not. Alright, let's talk. I want to do this one here about whistleblowers, just a little clip off this. So we reviewed this yesterday, the whistleblowers who were talking in front of the Senate yesterday. Well, there was another clip that I found after the fact of something quite chilling. The FBI will crush you, this government will crush you and your family. Whistleblowers' chilling testimony warns about costs of exposing government corruption. Texas Lindsay says FBI whistleblower Garrett O'Boyle just ended today's hearing with a chilling warning for future whistleblowers. So we're going to skip the article entirely and we're just going to go right in and listen to this, which is something that I did warn about when I started hearing about whistleblowers who happen to go against the Democrat side. They don't do this for whistleblowers who go against Republicans. Instead, they pardon them and make them into heroes and martyrs, and sometimes offer them the chance to run for a House seat. Manning, who, by the way, should have been pardoned, because Bradley/Chelsea Manning did nothing wrong. She is not worthy of a House seat, mind you, but still did nothing wrong. There's a difference. There's a vast amount of land between should be in prison and should be in Congress. Snowden, another one. I can't think of the other one's name right now either. I can see his face. The other big one. I keep thinking James O'Keefe, but that's the Veritas guy. Oh, I can see his face. The guy that holed up in the British Embassy forever. Why can I not think of his name? No, I'm saying Snowden. I know Snowden's name, Edward Snowden. Oh, who's the other big whistleblower? WikiLeaks guy. Assange, that's the name. Yep, that was the face that was in my mind, too. Alright, anyway, let's see what the whistleblower has to say here.
All of the hardships you've gone through. If one of your really good friends, your former colleagues, came to you and said, I have this thing that is being covered up, and I think the American people need to know about it, what advice would you give them?
I would tell them first to pray about it, long and hard. And I would tell them I could take it to Congress for them, or I could put them in touch with Congress, but I would advise them not to do it.
So you would legitimately try to protect one of your colleagues from doing what you have done?
Absolutely.
And how do you think that solves being able to shine light on corruption, weaponization, any kind of misconduct that exists with the American people?
It doesn't solve it. But the FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. And we are all examples of that.
I can't think of a more sobering way to end a hearing. I yield back.
All right. And that's the thing. The government will crush you. If you see something, say something, unless it goes against the power structure. All right, let's talk about, speaking of people in the FBI, let's talk about this guy. Outside a Baltimore school, in the evil hat, with the evil gun. This is a setup. Tolly Taylor over at WBAL 11 TV tweets out tonight on WBAL TV 11. A man with an AR-15, and it just happened to be an AR-15, by the way, has been showing up for weeks to a school bus drop-off for local elementary school students. Parents say their kids are afraid. The man says he's protesting Governor Westmore's new gun control law. You'll hear from both sides at 5 to 6 p.m. And we've got a report on that as well. Dude, this guy glows in the dark.
Cell phone video taken Wednesday shows a school bus dropping off Severn Elementary School students while a man with an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle in his hands looks on from across the street. Jamie Sparrow, the parent who recorded this video, says he's seen the man there for 3 weeks.
I feel like if we don't do something about it now, then we'll be talking again, and it'll be too late at that point, you know?
What do you mean by too late?
I think that lives could be lost, people could be harmed.
Sparrow says besides the fear it's caused, sometimes the bus won't bring kids home because they've heard he's out there. The man with the gun is Jaden McAdory, and he says what he's doing is not about scaring parents or children, it's about protesting the recent gun control measures Governor Westmore signed into law.
I really wasn't coming out here for the kids. I was coming out here to show people that this is legal.
For parents who might ask, just because you can do this, does that mean that you should do this?
No, it does not mean that. But I think that if I do this enough, that it will create enough deterrence from crime in there.
And we have a threat that's so vile here. I'll put it on the screen, but I cannot read that out loud. Not on YouTube. I can't believe that that got permitted on Twitter. I can't believe that got permitted on Twitter. Holy crap. I'm going to give everybody a little chance to read that there. But I can't say that out loud. There's no way Wojcicki or whoever her successor is will shut this channel down if I read that out loud. Even if I'm just highlighting what somebody else had to say about it. That is, wow. That's going in the Discord. In Clown World. I know I shouldn't put that in Clown World because I got this feeling that there's another place that I should put that, but that's where we're putting that for now. Wow. Anyway, let's read from WBAL TV 11. Now that I've completely lost my faith in humanity, I-Team, parents concerned about man with assault rifle at a school bus stop. From Tolly Taylor. Parents are concerned about a man who is regularly spotted carrying an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle at a school bus stop in Severn. Jamie Sparrow, a Severn Elementary School parent, recorded a cell phone video Wednesday showing the man with an AR-15 in his hands at the bus stop where his 6-year-old daughter gets off. Parents said the man, Jaden McAdory, has been there for drop-offs for weeks. They train to hide if this thing enters their school, and it's right there, said parent Michael Haley. How can they not be a little nervous about that? How can it not give them anxiety? Haley said his family had guns growing up. Still, he's been driving his 3 kids home from school using a different route recently, so his kids don't have to see the man standing there. That is a level of white privilege that pales beyond a lot of other things too, by the way. I feel like if we don't do something about it now, then we'll be talking again, or it'll be too late at that point, Sparrow told the I-Team. I think that lives could be lost or people could be harmed. I think that you're a miserable Karen, so... McAdory said that what he's doing is not about scaring parents or children, it's about protesting the recent gun control measures Wes Moore signed into law. Guns can be safe if it's controlled by the right person, McAdory said. It really wasn't coming out here for the kids. I was coming out here to show that people this is legal. No, you're doing that to try to get somebody to come back out and react to the fact that you are a black man holding a rifle near where their white kids get off the bus. And this glows in the dark. So, I don't buy a word of this. Especially given the fact that Kinzinger was one of the respondents to this. I don't know if Kinzinger knew that this dude was black either, by the way. Because I've got this feeling that he wouldn't have put out the threat of, yeah, this guy better hope that my kids aren't at this bus stop when I go out there. Or you'll do what, Kinzinger? It's all the show. They're all on the same side. It might as well be the Muppet Show. I mean, we've got Waldorf and Statler. See? I'm going to pull both of these images up in new tabs, and I'm going to bring them over one at a time. Open link in new tab. No, I don't want open link in new tab. I want to open new image in new tab. There we go. Yes, I know how to operate... I know how to operate technology, I promise. There's your before. It really is the Muppet Show. All right, let's keep going. All right, we'll do some immigration stuff here. We're actually closing out towards the end, so. From the Daily News, New York Daily News, Eric Adams claims nearly half of all New York City hotel rooms are now filled by migrants, but numbers don't quite add up. Well, unless they're paying for those rooms, then they shouldn't be. From Michael Gartland. In an effort to illustrate the severity of the migrant crisis on the city, Mayor Adams claimed Wednesday that nearly half of all hotel rooms in New York are now occupied by migrants seeking asylum, an assertion that was immediately pounced on as being inaccurate. Adams has come under fire on several fronts in recent days for his admin's latest attempt to find housing for more than 60,000 migrants who have come to the city since last year. Republicans north of the city have slammed him for directing migrants to hotels in Rockland and Orange. Parents have attacked him for placing them in public school gymnasiums, and civil rights groups criticized him Wednesday for considering Rikers Island as an option to house asylum seekers. Adams offered a response to those criticisms Wednesday by underscoring the severity of the crisis, but it appeared to backfire within a matter of hours. In order to address the onslaught, we have to have places you can put people, the mayor said during an unrelated news conference in Harlem. Almost half of all hotel rooms are now taken up by asylum seekers. Think about that. I'm not sure what's going to take before people hear what I'm saying. New York City is the hotel capital. We're the hotel capital, tourism, visitors, sporting events, graduations. It's a major economic engine for us. Yeah, tourism is a big thing. I live in a city, or a state rather, that is fueled majority by tourism. I get it. Almost 50% of those hotel rooms are now being taken up by migrant asylum seekers. But not long after making the claim, it came under fire. Some contended there was no way the mayor could be mathematically accurate. Others, with a vested interest in city hotels, neither confirmed nor contradicted the mayor's assertion. Councilwoman Diana Ayala says the math doesn't add up. It would be statistically impossible. Ayala, D. Manhattan and Bronx, was alluding to the fact that there are approximately 130,000 hotel rooms in the city and currently less than 40,000 migrants residing here now. So far, according to city officials, 65,000 asylum seekers have come to New York, but many have not remained, according to an internal Adams admin memo, which is the first reported by CNN this month. Approximately 37,500 migrants are currently living within the 5 boroughs. So I don't think it's half. It's more than it should be. It really is. But it ain't no half. Good try, Eric Adams. And yes, as they say, New York City is considering Rikers Island as a last-ditch site. Yeah, that's great for your optics. Hey, we're just going to put the illegal migrants in prison. That'll go over fantastically for Bernadette Hogan, Kevin Sheehan, Larry Salona, and Emily Crane. Besides, what do you do with the people who are already in Rikers? The Big Apple's considering a plan to house migrants at Rikers. Sources told the Post on Wednesday, as Mayor Adams revealed nearly 50% of the city's contracted hotel rooms are occupied by asylum seekers amid the surging crisis. That is a stupid idea. I don't think I have to tell you why that's a stupid idea. I think most people figure that one out. I hope they use Priceline to get the best price. Nice. Some more news from this year on the sad side. I know Mr. Scott has pointed out that we've been very, very funny lately. I've been trying to lighten up the show for him. Because, number one, I don't want to keep giving bad news. I like having people laughing and doing and chatting over here. But the other thing is sometimes we have to go down this route. This is from the Daily Mail, though. Migrant girl 8 has died in Border Patrol custody after suffering a medical emergency while being held with her family at a station in Texas. Unfortunately, this is not the first or the last, either. From Rohan and Gupta. An 8-year-old girl has died while in Border Patrol custody, authorities said, a rare occurrence that comes as the agency struggles with overcrowding. Yeah, even under the border cages and whatnot, we didn't have a lot of child deaths at the time. The overcrowding comes as migrants gathered on both sides of the U.S.-Mexico border last week, hours before Title 42 expired, including the girl with her family rushing across into the U.S. ahead of new asylum rules that have now replaced the Pinko Pox-era order. The child and her family were being held at the station in Harlingen in the Rio Grande Valley, one of the busiest corridors for illegal crossings. U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the Border Patrol's parent agency, said in a statement. So, F in the chat. For somebody who was being used politically as a pawn. Somebody who probably didn't have the agency to come in and say, no, I don't want to make this journey. And I hate seeing that with kids, too. Like, the adults that are coming trying to make a better life or whatever it is that they're looking for when they come to this are adults with full faculties of their own agency. But the kids are innocent, you guys. The kids are innocent. And being shuffled around for political points in both directions. From CBS of the Bay Area, local CBS affiliate. California's safety net bill would give undocumented workers a share of unemployment benefits. Well, Gavin, where does the money come from? From Jose Martinez. 20 years ago, Luis Mejia packed his bags and left his entire life in El Salvador, including his wife and 2 daughters. Every morning he looks at their pictures trying to find the strength to continue a journey that has become difficult since the pandemic started. I used to work at a pizzeria when the pandemic began. My boss cut our hours, Mejia said. We spent some time with him in his apartment in San Francisco's Mission District. He told me that, like many other undocumenteds, he was ineligible for unemployment. He hopes the new Safety Net for Workers Act could change that. The California Senate bill, SB 227, would provide unemployment benefits to all workers regardless of immigration status. If you look on the streets, under the bridges, there are people who, since the pandemic, continue to suffer the consequences and who have not been able to get back on their feet. So that is why this law is so important, Mejia explained. We need the governor to sign it this year. An estimated 2 million undocumented workers in California have been excluded from unemployment benefits and other assistance during the pandemic. Sponsored by Senator Maria Elena Durazo, the bill would provide undocumented immigrant workers laid off with $300 a week for up to 20 weeks. Now, I've got a couple questions about this. My first question, with the rise of E-Verify making these people ineligible for benefits, or I'm sorry, ineligible to work on a legal status, are they paying into the unemployment fund? Now, and the reason that I ask this, they don't directly pay into this, but a part of being a business owner, at least in this state, I don't know how this works everywhere else, but a part of what your unemployment is, and like the people who advocate for if you're really, really poor and need the help and are too proud to take it, will tell you that it's actually your money. It's part of the taxes that you pay go into specifically the unemployment insurance. Your employer pays a certain amount of tax, and you pay a certain amount of tax to go into this trust fund to make sure that there is money in there for unemployment insurance. But the people who are working, and my question here is this a person who's working under the table, or the people who would be benefited by this? Are they working under the table, or do they have wages coming out and going into this unemployment insurance fund? If that is the case, if the latter is the case, I have actually not as much problem with this. I still have some problem with it, based on the fact of if they can go through there and work in a documented fashion, why don't they just get documented? Obviously. If they can bypass the E-Verify, why don't they just make it legal so they never have to worry about it again? Except for the fact that a lot of them will lose their jobs, because then they can go back and demand minimum wage. But if they're making $10 an hour under the table in California, where $15 an hour is the minimum wage, if they're pulling $10 an hour under the table, they're not paying into that unemployment insurance fund. So where's this money coming from? But it's there, apparently. Alright, we got just a couple more here. We're actually going to end on a down note, like The Empire Strikes Back. But we're going to finish these ones here from the Daily Wire. I just fucked up. Court Reform Group accidentally leaked donor list. From Michael Whitaker. A group advocating for an overhaul of the Supreme Court may have torpedoed its own organization after one of its staffers accidentally emailed its donor list to the press. Gabe Roth, the executive director of Fix the Court, an activist organization linked to ongoing efforts to reform the Supreme Court, sent confidential tax forms to the Washington Examiner after an inquiry into a previous failure of the organization to file its Form 990 in 2021. Ross said that he had misunderstood the filing instructions and sent the outlet copies of the organization's Schedule B 2021 and 2022 forms. Almost immediately, Roth realized his mistake. "Shit, I'm not legally allowed to send you those," Roth replied 1 minute later. "I really messed up. Can you call me now?" According to several tax lawyers, it is not, in fact, illegal to disclose donor lists to the public. It's a mistake. It's a really bad idea, especially if you're in an activist situation, because a lot of these people are donating confidentially because they don't want to be found out that they're supporting this, because it could cost them jobs down the road. It could cost them in numerous other financial ways, and a lot of them probably have ties to the government somewhere, which points to a conflict of interest. I mean, you can donate whatever you want with your own money, but there are certain situations where it's a really bad idea to be open with it. There are certain things you want to keep private. Your stripper fund, your porn fund, and the activist organizations that you donate to are 3 of those examples. Ironically, in all 3 of those situations, you're paying a lot more money than the activity is probably worth, and getting a moment of instant gratification before the person that you're giving money to stops caring about you. According to the website, Fix the Court advocates for 18-year term limits for the Supreme Court justices and for greater transparency and accountability. At the highest court in the land, the organization circulated spurious sexual assault claims against then prospective Justice Brett Kavanaugh in 2018, and reportedly purchased the domain names BrettKavanaugh.com and BrettKavanaugh.net for that purpose. Fix the Courts also blasted Clarence Thomas for not formally disclosing certain gifts he received from billionaire Harlan Crow before he was forced to. And now that they changed the rules, he probably will. We are seeing an uptick over on the Rumble side. Thank you guys for coming in here and joining me over there. If it wasn't for the fact that, like, I get done and I go eat dinner right away and pretty much go to bed, given the number of people who start to flow in probably between 7:30 and 8, I would almost move the show a little bit later. Because the majority of the crowd comes in on the Rumble side at the last half hour of the show. I've noticed. Alright, anyway. The forums revealed the group brought in $290,000 in revenue from 2021, primarily from two other left-leaning nonprofits, the New Venture Fund and William Florida Hewlett Foundation. So basically, it's one hand washing the other. As is the majority of the money that's flowing through Washington, D.C. As you can see, if you reviewed the forums, I'm not a good fundraiser, Roth said. I'm not a good CPA, I'm a klutz. Roth was paid a six-figure salary by Fix the Court in 2022. Yeah, I'm betting they wish they hadn't paid him that much money now. Two more. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson's allies push for a $12 billion financial package to raise taxes and defund the police. You get what you deserve, Chicago. You said you wanted to oust Lori Lightfoot because she was too extreme for Chicago. And instead, you voted in a taller, I think heavier set. I think Brandon Johnson's a bigger guy, if I remember correctly. But a taller and larger Lori Lightfoot with different plumbing in front. From Kyle Morris. Allies of newly elected Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson are pushing $12 billion financial package that would raise taxes for certain residents in the city and divest from policing and surveillance. Yeah, I called this guy Lori Lightfoot Light when he was first elected. It turns out he is Lori Lightfoot to the extreme. Released Tuesday, the proposal from Action Center on Race and Economy and People's Unity platform outlines several measures Brandon Johnson can take to raise or save up to $12 billion a year to fund true community safety. From housing and education to climate and violence prevention, the People's Unity platform called for Johnson's office to take action on a number of its suggestions in the proposal. First, we get the money. Oh man, this is so Chicago. Like, this is a parody of what Chicago used to be. Well, let me rephrase that. This is like the Marjorie Taylor Greene of Chicago, to put this guy in charge and this plan in charge. This is like somebody drew a caricature of what they believe Chicago to be, and then it came to actually be Chicago. And you, again, get what you deserve. You voted for it, you demanded it, and have at it, Chicago. There's the two of them together. Alright, and the last one, unfortunately, again, like the Empire Strikes Back, we gotta end on a down note, because I didn't see where this fit anywhere else. But from CBS News of Minnesota, a North Dakota man pleads guilty to fatal hit and run in a case that drew political attention. And the reason that this is on here is because he pled guilty to Man 2. He deliberately ran down a protester with a car, and he pled guilty to Man 2. A North Dakota man who initially claimed he ran over and killed an 18-year-old after a political argument pleaded guilty Thursday to manslaughter, prosecutors said. Shannon Brandt of Glenfield, North Dakota, was initially charged with murder in the September 2022 death of Kaylor Ellingson during a street dance at McHenry, about 150 miles northeast of Bismarck. The case drew attention on social media because Brandt initially said he ran over Ellingson, who he called a Republican extremist, after an argument about politics. That's a confession. How did you get down to Man 2? Well, we all know how he got down to Man 2, but... Investigators have said the disagreement was not political, in spite of the fact that he said it was political, and called the kid a Republican extremist, and there was no evidence to show that Ellingson was a member of a Republican extremist group. It doesn't matter what Ellingson was. What matters was the intent. This is a slaying with intent over political differences. This is a hate crime. Foster County State Attorney Kara Brinster said in a news release Thursday that Brandt had been drinking and argued with Ellingson before driving erratically, knocking the victim down with his car and running over his legs and torso. A probable cause affidavit said Brandt left the scene and was visibly intoxicated when authorities found him at his home in Glenfield. In exchange for his guilty plea, prosecutors dismissed the charges of leaving the scene of an accident. Brandt remains free on bond pending sentencing. He faces up to 10 years for murdering a 20-year-old. Even in North Dakota. Well, that's all the news that I have today. Let's finish out looking over at our Twitter trending to see what's happening over there, what they think that we should be talking about. We use the regular trending. We don't actually use the For You or anything. So it's not what they think I should be talking about. It's what they think we should all be talking about. Number 1, trending tonight is SmackDown. The regular one, because SmackDown is happening right now as we see. No audio tonight, of course, with SmackDown because they copyright claim badly. What does Grayson have planned for AJ Styles in a YouTube short that we can't listen to, unfortunately? May 19th in a clip that we can't listen to, unfortunately. Real LA Knight said he could beat the Street Profits with anyone as his partner. The Megastars get that chance tonight on SmackDown, as it will be Angelo Dawkins and Montez Ford versus Knight and Rick Boogs WWE. Yeah. Again, I will admit to the fact, everybody knows that WWE is all staged, but it's still kind of impressive the level of athleticism that goes into some of this kind of stuff. Even if they are trying to move now into some of the identity politics of things. Thank you, LWO, Latino World Order. But I've seen amazing flying flips, knockdowns, and really a ballet of simulated fighting. And I watched this when I was a kid. I still can't believe it's going on. Alright, trending number 2. Let's get the live chat back up here. Jim Brown, trending with the Browns. Super Sky appointed Jim Brown, who led the NFL in rushing 8 times in his 9 NFL seasons, before deciding to retire at 29 to become a great movie star. Averaged 5.2 yards a carry for his career, also the greatest lacrosse player ever to live. A legend. Did Jim Brown pass away? He did. All-time great running back, actor, social activist, died at 87. I didn't even know that. Well, I guess I don't know anything that Jim Brown has been in either, so... Pro Football Hall of Famer and civil rights advocate and actor. Seems a lot of people on Twitter did know who this guy was, though, so I kind of regret that I don't, because it sounds like he had a pretty good body of work. Kendrick is trending. I was going to say, probably not Anna Kendrick. I would enjoy it if it was Anna Kendrick. I like Anna Kendrick. She's cute. And I like her work. But this is, of course, Kendrick Lamar. Summer Walker has now made a song with J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, and Drake. J. Cole, Audio Hug, Kendrick Lamar, Purple Hearts, Drake, Girls Need Love. Which one is your favorite? I couldn't identify any of them. Honestly. Beyonce has dropped a remix of America Has a Problem featuring Kendrick Lamar because, well, I'm going to tell you right now, they're going to be doing that based on activism and an election year coming up. But I don't know who these people are. I know that this guy is tangentially somehow related to the Kardashians, because my roommate used to watch the Kardashians. And I actually know who Beyonce is. I couldn't name any one of her current songs, but I know who she is, at the very least. Number 4, Loma. What is Loma? Let's find out. Tomorrow night, Devin Haney was 173 pounds when he fought Loma. Haney fans, Loma overrated, but they make sure to give Haney his credit for beating him. This appears to be UFC. Boxing is what it is. I think people are trending this over a push doing some of the trash talk pre-fight. This is what this appears to be. Loma after that sturdy push from Dev.
Now that you mention it, I think I'm bleeding inside my chest. Now that you mention it, I think I'm bleeding inside my chest.
I think I'm bleeding inside of my chest. I wouldn't mind seeing some more boxing. Like some of the the fight sports and whatnot I wasn't into when I was younger, but as so much else got woke, I've become more interested in it. Bull riding, that was something I was actually interested in when I was younger, but boxing, UFC, stuff like that. Unfortunately, I don't know who these people are, but I'm tangentially interested. But I know a lot of this comes on pay-per-view, so I can usually find better things to spend my money on than pay-per-view. And the last one for the night is Tip Drill. Was that Tip Drill playing going into the commercial break? Did I just hear Tip Drill going into a commercial break during the NBA playoffs? Wow, what a world we live in. I don't know what Tip Drill is, but I think we're about to get a 4-second clip so we can hear it. Let me kill the volume over here, and then we will figure out what Tip Drill is. Because again, no idea. Maybe this is why I can't grow my channel, because I don't know anything on the Twitter trending. Oh, the clip has no audio. This looks like a bunch of GIFs. I thought we were actually going to hear what tip drill was. What is tip drill? Tip drill is a song by Nelly that makes reference to African American sexual slang, a type of small hand drill that uses very small drill bits. How old is this song? I used to listen to Nelly. And yes, I will admit to that. I see a video from '08 of it, so it's back there. Maybe this is why they're concerned about the fact that it was on network TV. That could have something to do with it. Hello, DMCA. Alright, we're done. We're out of here. Interesting Twitter trending. More and more of the stuff comes on here, and I don't know what it is. Like, oddly enough, one of the last real big entertainment names that I knew on Twitter trending was Taylor Swift. Oddly enough. So, with that, we're going to head out of here. I mean, there was usually more stuff that I knew in the mornings, I think. At night, it's a lot of SmackDown and a lot of award show stuff, and I don't know what that stuff is. I tried to keep up with pop culture, it just didn't work. Especially with pop culture really turning into politics for a long time. Like, these people that are out there doing pop culture, some of the people I've never heard of when we talk about Twitter trending, are now going and endorsing and bringing the politicians that we all look at onto stage. So I guess I just looked more askance into what it is that the politicians were saying, because they're actually making policy. The vapid and shallow celebrities, not so much. But let's head out of here for the night. And yes, I will fully admit when I don't know something. I have no problem doing that. No problem whatsoever. Like, with that confused look on my face, like, what is tip drill? What are they speaking of? I don't get it. All right, my phone's about to die, so, and we're streaming to Instagram over there. Let's head out of here for the night. All right, we had a great night tonight. A bunch of people came in and watched us over here. A bunch of chat went on, so it was a great time. A lot of people having some good input over here, so I enjoy that. I like to see that kind of stuff. We will be back here on Monday for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. I don't know what I'm doing this weekend. I don't have to go anywhere this weekend. I wound up having to work, but that's because the 10th rule of acquisition says that Latinum fades and greed is eternal. And I got the opportunity to add 8 more hours to my paycheck and put that money straight into the house fund. So that's going to be coming up here. Hey, maybe I'll throw some slow cooker mac and cheese together, and we'll play some video games together. Maybe I'll do it in the Discord. Maybe I'll do it on the Twitch. Who knows? It's free. It's freeing. I'm free. I have no idea what it is I want to do, but I kind of want to hang out and do some more stuff here and have some fun. Not run off and do a bunch of... We'll figure it out. Maybe I'll do some hiking. No idea. But regardless, we'll be back here on Monday for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary, 6 p.m. Central Time, to see what happens over the weekend, see if we do get a debt ceiling deal, and a host of more things. They like to pack a bunch of stuff in on the weekend, so we will see what happens there. Looking forward to seeing you guys and seeing what goes on with that and seeing your chats as well. Thank you again. We will see you next time over here on Contemporary. Who are we going to go raid? Let's go figure that out quick. Let's go see Jungle Tees tonight. That's where we're going to go raid tonight. So come back in, join me here on Monday for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until Monday, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.